Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast, is brought to you by Genesis House and the Friends in Recovery community, a thriving network of individuals who are fighting back against the stigma of addiction and recovery. Join your hosts,
the Podfather, Jersey Ed,
Miss Meg,
as they break the silence and speak up about the real issues of addiction, treatment, and recovery. Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast, is available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, here are your friends in recovery.
Hey everybody, Jersey Ed here, friendsinrecoverypodcast.com, as the Podfather would say.
That is exactly what he says.
That's exactly what he says. So Podfather's not here today. We miss you, Podfather. I am here with my co-host,
Miss Meg.
Hey,
What's
Miss
up,
Meg?
Jersey Ed?
How are you?
What's the deal, man? It's good to see you.
That's good to see you too. Long time no see.
I know, huh?
I know. Last time we were here, we had a whole bunch of people sitting next to us, and
Yeah, it was like a full
was.
studio up
I
there.
know.
It was.
Lots
It was a
of
party.
laughs.
yeah,
Yeah.
it
Lots
was
of laughs.
fun. Yeah, we had Chris on, and it was a good episode. Check it out. I think it was the episode before this one. So everything's good. Everything's it's warm in here, thank God, and life is good. I can't complain. How about you?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
Hanging in there.
Yeah. How's Pops?
He's doing well.
Good.
He's, continues to be on the mend, although I do see the pain in his eyes when he goes to sit down. That's the one thing that I'm
okay.
trying to get him working around. But his energy's up. It's pretty good.
Good.
And, one day at a time.
I want him on the show.
We're getting him. We're
Okay.
getting him. I am working on it.
I
Don't
had
you
fun
worry.
on your show with him. He's a good guy. So
Yeah, he's a blast, man.
I'll be honest with you. I watched the Addictionary podcast for your dad.
Okay, well, he's gonna love that because he loves when we get good reviews, and then if I talk about it to my mother, I was talking about it with my parents last night. And I'm like, Dad, they said they really like you. They've got a couple of reviews, and he's like this to my mom, I'm like, Dad, you're the star of the show. We all get it.
He's funny. He sits back, the jacket. He didn't have a cigar last time, but he just sits back and he talks. And
He's the best.
yeah, he is. How about you, Sweets? We love you too, Sweets.
We
You
do,
do?
Sweets.
Yeah, we
You're
do.
here, man.
We do.
It's almost like I'm not here sometimes, I just feel like nobody knows that I'm here.
Well, you can come up. Come on up.
Yeah, no. I mean, I can barely move in this tight suit I'm
That's
wearing.
right. Yeah. What's the color today? Can't see.
This
It's
is
little smoky in here.
a maroon crushed velvet
Oh, man.
double-breasted suit.
That looks like you got it from Walmart.
I did.
Very
So,
good.
Yeah.
Is this what recovery's about? I think I said this.
I'm wearing flip-flops and socks, though.
Very nice.
So
Oh, wow.
I'm definitely accenting the suit with something unique.
That's very
special.
good.
Yep.
Well, I like
Making it your own.
I like the sandals and socks that you had on the other day.
Yeah, those are Birkenstocks.
Yes.
Birkenstocks with the socks.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Real thick, knee-high socks. Yeah.
Going all
Short shorts, because it was warm in here.
Sound like my daughter.
Yeah.
Young kids nowadays.
And all our listeners are missing. I mean, our viewers are missing out too, because
They
like
are.
I said, we got the camera aiming at you, so they can't see all
But
these
we-
creative suits.
But we can't figure out how to turn it around.
We just don't
know
only
how.
have the one camera. I mean, if you'd like us to get another camera, please feel free
Yeah.
to donate one.
Donate, yes.
You want to see what I'm wearing? Donate a camera.
That's right.
Yeah, there you go. Problem solved.
Help at friendsrecoverypodcast.com.
One more sponsor. If we get one more sponsor, I promise we will get a camera. You'll get to see my suit.
Shit, one more if we get one.
Yeah.
We have one, but
That's true.
it is what it is. We love Genesis.
So
but
there it is. So that's the price of sponsorship. You get to see
There it
me in
is.
my suit.
That is
There
it.
it is.
Let's,
That's the
let's try
payoff.
to make it happen, guys.
We'll do a GoFundMe.
Yeah.
C Sweets.
I love it.
C-Suites run. So, I don't know. I don't even know what we're going to talk about today. I think we're just going to kind of go on and
Yeah.
on about things and
Yeah.
whatever pops up, I guess. Is
Yeah.
that what we were doing?
Yeah,
or
I think
did you guys
so.
have a topic?
We were talking. This subject has come up a few times, and I saw a post recently on social media about this, and I got the chance to see some people's reactions. But this term of either being in recovery or being recovered, and what that means in your life path, but also, I have some thoughts about what it means in different parts of the clinical world. And I can talk about that because the eating disorder world sort of defines it a little bit differently. But I don't know. I was curious what you guys think about that, and if we wanted to talk about that, because I feel like people have strong reactions to the term recovered,
Yeah.
and I think people identify with these words,
I think they have they hold a lot of weight. I mean, for me personally, I always heard recovery before I got before I got sober, and what I heard is that it was a lifetime of recovery, and not really knowing what that meant when it was explained to me. It was terrifying. So basically, a lifetime of trying not to use. I was like, that actually sounds worse than what I'm doing. So
That
I'm
sounds-
good.
yeah,
I'm
that
just
sounds
going to keep
terrible.
doing what I was doing.
Well, there is a website for it. So
What's the website?
it's PubMed.
Uh-huh.
And it says recovered in recovery or recovered from substance abuse. A question of identity.
Yeah.
It goes on and on.
Well, when it was sold to me, as, they
did you
used
like
the,
that computer thing I did there?
I liked how
that's
you did
official.
it.
That's
a
very
new,
fancy.
it's a
Yeah.
new thing we got going here.
Yep.
Yeah, Jersey had just dipped
That's
off and did
right.
research,
That's
real-time
right. Yes,
research.
And by
That's
the way, in a peer-reviewed, published medical journal,
See
I am
that?
impressed.
See
Wow.
that? Listen,
That's legit.
That's the shit you get from Jersey Ed.
Quality data.
I don't know what it means, but there's something on that screen.
Well, you'll have to pass the computer over to me. But the way it was described to me was like a broken leg, and they said, listen, you're not always recovering from a broken leg. You can have a broken leg, and as long as you do the things that need to be done, you can recover from that broken leg. You're not always recovering from a broken leg. And, I think the way they sold it to me wasn't that I could be cured from addiction. It was that, if I did this recovery process, I would lose the desire to drink and drug. I would lose the obsession. But more importantly, I would recover from my way of life. Like I no longer have consequences based on the life I led. I no longer deal with probation. I no longer look over my shoulder. I no longer have to worry about the things I've done because I've reconciled with them. I've accepted them. I've addressed them. So I've recovered from that unhealthy way of life I was living as an addict. Now,
That part of your life, anyway.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
But
'cause
are
there's
we-
damage
are we-
there.
Yeah, but are we fully recovered, like our whole life, or are we always in recovery?
well, what if you twist the word around and I actually didn't recover anything? I created something new. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like let's
I like
spin
that.
it around.
Love
and
that.
It's not,
Yeah.
I didn't recover an old way of life. I just recovered from the damage.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like the same way you could recover from being, having the flu. Like I just had the flu for a week and a half. Took me out. I don't have the flu anymore. And I've recovered from that. I'm back running about 85% right now.
Yeah.
And, I think I recovered from my lifestyle. I recovered from the damage that was being done, but I don't have anything I had before that. I have all new stuff. A new way of looking at the world. I have a new life. I have new relationships with people. I didn't want the old one.
No.
Yeah, or anything that had to do with it before. I wasn't trying to recover an old way of life. So, I mean, there's so many ways to look at this, but that's my take on it. And I definitely, if I'm in a room, I usually identify as a retired professional addict.
That's good.
But if somebody asks me if I'm in recovery or recovered, I would say recovered.
Okay. Okay. I would have to differ from that.
It would be weird
just
if you didn't.
because that's who I am.
Yeah.
I take the opposite
Waste
side
all our
the time.
listeners' time.
Exactly.
I just ditto. I agree.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you. Next.
Yeah.
Now what are we talking about?
What Sweet said?
Yeah, exactly.
I understand all that, and maybe parts of my life are recovered, but I'm always working on my recovery, and I kind of overlook my whole life as recovery, and the minute I stop doing that, the minute I stop growing, I'm in trouble. That's how I look at it. So to me, recovered means, okay, it's done, it's over. What's next? Do I get to drink again? No. I mean, is that something that, or using it, whatever the case may be, but maybe it's just a mental mindset. Don't forget, I'm back from 26 years ago. So it was definitely a different game 26 years ago. 26 years ago, even you couldn't go to a meeting and say you're an addict and alcoholic. Now you can in an AA meeting. But back then, they did not want to hear that you were using cocaine or whatever it was. You were kind of looked down upon. So maybe that's where that comes from. Maybe I'm kind of just old school, and I'm willing to change. I'm okay. I'm open to different things. I have no problems, but that's just my mindset right now. And I definitely understand, Sweets, what you're talking about being.
You just don't agree with it.
No, not that I don't agree with it. It's just that I'm used to saying for the last 26 years I'm in recovery.
Right.
To me, recovered seems like, okay, well, I did that. Let's try something different. Now, trying something different doesn't mean we have to go back to the old way, but this recovery shit's working for me up until today.
Right.
Why should I change it?
Well, that's a good point. I mean,
Yeah.
if saying it that way got you to where you are today, don't change.
Yeah, no,
You know what I mean?
no.
Like just because of our conversation or whatever, don't change it. Like
exactly. Yeah.
you know, if that's what got you here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a different world today. Now, recovery looks different today. People are smoking pot now in some of their recovery. People are on Suboxone now. I'm not opposed to any of that because the Suboxone is saving some of these kids' lives. Or a lot of these kids are leaving rehab. Kids, I say, whatever, whoever's leaving rehab, and they're using again, and they're dying after 30 days of being clean. So if this Suboxone can bridge them, I agree with it. I know a person who's using marijuana recreationally, and it wasn't a problem in their life, but they're recovered from the opiates and all the other stuff. That's not my program. But I see that out there. Their whole life is completely changed. They're recovered or they're in recovery. It's not like it used to be. They're not death and destruction all the time now. Right. It's a different way of life. They have definitely changed their life, but they're using a substance. Who am I to tell them not to do that? Right. I wouldn't do that, and I wouldn't suggest a sponsee not to do that, but it's a different world today.
I was initially sold on recovered. Like I didn't start with recovery and that's like, oh no, I've changed my mind and decided I want to be recovered. I was sold on the idea to engage in this process because I could become recovered. Had nobody said that, I don't know if I would have done it. If I was sold a hopeless idea that I would always be struggling with this and I would always have to be in recovery, it just didn't make logical sense to me. Like I couldn't wrap my head around that idea. So when it was sold as recovered, I was just more likely to try it.
Makes sense though.
Yeah.
You're telling me I can fix this. I'm not going to be cured, but you're telling me I can fix this and I can heal and I can get to the other side of it and not feel what I feel. I'm in on that one. You know what I mean? Yeah. So recovered just clicked better for me, made sense for me, but it doesn't necessarily mean that my version of it is the way you have to accept it. I think everyone can grab their own, whatever drives you in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever gets you through the front door, right?
Yeah. What about you, Meg?
Well, it's interesting because I did have a similar experience, but I actually, for some reason, sort of hit a turning point where I went from the term recovery to recovered. And I don't know. I mean, on my podcast, I interviewed a former supervisor of mine when I did some eating disorder work, and she always referred to herself as recovered 30 years from anorexia and bulimia. And in the eating disorder world, you use the term recovered, and it demonstrates sort of a level of vulnerability or inconsistency or maybe an incapacity to do the work if you use the word recovery, meaning you're still in the process of the healing, meaning that you're still vulnerable. And I think for me, for a while, for many years, I used the term recovery because I was still doing the work to not go back to the substance. I still had people around me that were using. I still felt vulnerable. It's part of the reason why I stayed on Vivitrol for as long as I did. When I made the decision to terminate the Vivitrol and then start sort of exploring these other parts of myself that I knew needed to be healed, I was like, recovery, the word recovery is just not making sense to me right now anymore because the work that I'm doing is healing the inner child. It's looking at the wounds from the past that maybe led me to my addiction in the first place. The addiction came secondary. That was a way to survive. What's the real problem here? And that didn't have to do with drugs or alcohol. That had to do with wounds deep inside that were still open that I needed to heal. And so I came to a place where I was like, okay, so recovery is not making any sense. Recovered seems a little strange because if I say recovered, does that mean I go back to using, and does that make that okay? And for me, the answer is no. And so I said, okay, so what did I say? I said, similar to what you said, I said, recovery is to restore what was. Whatever I'm doing here is something far beyond that point. And so that's when I came up with this term, assimilated harmony. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to use that to describe my recovery. And it's a mouthful, so I don't really end up using it, but it really does describe the goal that I have now, which you could call recovery. It sounds like maybe the work that you're doing past the cravings and the urges is your recovery, where I'm looking at what triggers me, what hooks me, and how to get unhooked, and then how to prevent myself from getting hooked further by the triggers out there in the world that are not related to substance or substance use, but people, interpersonal relationships, things like that.
Well, to me, recovery still sounds like growing. No, I always want to grow and learn and keep going. Recovered means, okay, done. This is it. This is where we go. You kind of met where you're supposed to be at. I always want to grow. I always want to learn. I always want to, do better. I always want to get to the next plateau. So to me, that's what recovery sounds like to me. But you do make a good point, Meg, that, it's recovered, and I don't live that, I think you were saying too, so I don't live that old life anymore. I'm recovered from that old life. I guess it's just a matter of kind of how everybody's been brought up around it and your interpretation of it. Words are very strong too, so. I
mean, I definitely can see how recovered could lead someone to forget what they went through. Like, I'm done with that. I've closed that chapter of my life, and I don't have to worry about that anymore. And that's why I said it's whatever resonates with you. What resonates with me is that I've recovered, But in doing so, I have learned to have a healthy fear and take preventative measures to make sure that I don't go down that road again. But I have recovered, meaning that way of life no longer really influences what I do today. You know, I'm now, I guess to your point, like recovery is about growing and being a better person. But I think we all just strive for that. And that's actually normal.
Right.
And so as addicts and alcoholics, we don't know what normal is.
Yeah.
So we're like, no, I'm still in
yeah.
recovery.
Yes.
No, you're actually just doing normal stuff now. It's like you've recovered from the consequences of your addiction. You're no longer suffering from it. You no longer deal with the consequences of your life. You've healed them. You've addressed them. I would say you're recovered from that. Now you're just doing normal life. And normal life is about growing as a person and facing adversity and developing life skills and tools. But to us, it still feels like recovery because we never did it.
Right.
You know, so I guess to a certain extent, it really just comes down to how you want to look at it and what's palatable for you. Like, can I swallow the concept of recovered? No, because it makes me feel like I'm done and I'm afraid I'd use again. Then you know what? Great. Use recovery.
Yeah,
Doesn't
exactly.
matter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I would say the real challenge is when we all start to try to find one word and all agree on it. And it doesn't matter.
No.
What matters is how does it sound to
Doesn't
you?
mean to us, to
Right?
your personal.
You know, like, okay, you're in recovery. Fantastic. Keep doing it. Oh, you're recovered. Fantastic. Keep doing it.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's just, there is no one word that we can come
I
up
know.
with.
Yeah.
You know
You
what I
can't.
mean?
Yeah. As long as you don't say the cure, you're cured. Like
Yeah,
that
there's a book
commercial.
out there that says that.
That kills
The
me.
Cure for Addiction.
Yeah, I bought the book.
Did you?
Yeah. Well, actually, I didn't buy it. It was given to me by an alcoholic woman that clearly
That
did
book.
not use it. Yeah, she's like, you can take this, and I was like, okay. And I took it. Just you gotta know what's out there.
Yeah,
You know, you gotta
yeah.
know your enemy, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah, absolutely.
And I'm like, oh, you got the cure. Huh? It's in this book. What page?
Stay tuned. We're going to
Yeah.
take a commercial break. We're going to tell you what page.
Yeah. Since 1992, Genesis House has been helping real people heal from addiction on their private recovery campus in beautiful Palm Beach County, Florida. Their family-owned program is accredited by the Joint Commission and offers detox and dual diagnosis treatment in a comfortable and confidential setting. At Genesis House, they focus on treating the underlying causes of addiction. Their comprehensive approach includes psychiatric care, individual and small group therapy, trauma healing techniques, and holistic care including yoga, massage, and animal-assisted therapy. After treatment, their clients enjoy the lifelong support of a nationwide network of Genesis House alumni. Call Genesis House today at 1-800-737-0933 to speak with someone who understands. Visit them on the web at www.genesishouse.net. It's time to start your journey to a long and successful recovery. Welcome back to the Friends in Recovery Addiction Recovery podcast. We want to thank our sponsor, Genesis House, for supporting this show, along with individuals in recovery and the people that love them. Friends in Recovery Community of Support holds events across the country sponsored by Genesis House in Palm Springs, Florida, Marlton, New Jersey, Newtown, Connecticut, and Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. The Friends in Recovery Addiction Recovery podcast is powered by your likes, follows, subscribes, and shares. And please be sure to do us a favor and leave us a 5-star review. And now here are your Friends in Recovery.
Well, welcome back, everybody. Friends of Recovery podcast. I am Jersey Ed.
And I am Miss Meg. What's
Miss
up?
Meg,
What's up,
how's it
Jersey
going?
Ed?
We missed Podfather today.
We do miss Podfather. I feel lonely over here.
I know you and him are always buddy.
Yeah, that's
and
my homie right there.
I know. We miss you, Podfather, and I'm doing all your work here, so I hope you're happy about all this. So, it's time for the Jersey Ed podcast pick of the week. Gold Digger, the podcast. It's not a self-help or an AA podcast. It's about a woman who is a millionaire now. She started off her business with a camera and a wedding and doing weddings, and she turned it into this huge business. The host is Jenna Kutcher. And it says we'll answer all those questions and more. I guess how to become a millionaire. So listen to it. Jenna will bring you the productivity tips, social media strategies, business hacks, and inspirational stories that can help you design your dream career. She's pretty good. It's more geared towards women. I was listening to an episode up until they started talking about their cycle and how you should how you can. I was like, maybe this is not for me at this point.
How to streamline and adjust your cycle? That didn't speak to you, huh?
You shouldn't be like talking to people when I don't know. Can you help us on how and Meg?
I'm staying out of this one.
I was hoping that was the answer,
but aside from that, it sounds. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a millionaire?
It's
really.
Just another podcast.
Yeah, there's actually very good information on it. It is geared towards women, but I did get some information out of besides all that.
You sure did.
I know when my wife can do social media stuff and when she can't now.
There you go.
Yeah, why don't you try telling her when she can't?
Yeah,
okay. We know that works out.
Exactly.
Make sure you point it out.
Yeah. You guys know her, and yeah, you're right. Exactly. So, anyways, we were talking before the break about I don't even know what we were talking about.
Well, we were talking about the difference between recovery,
yes,
being recovered, and recovering,
yes,
being recovered, and then I think we kind of drifted off into possibly even talking about what the words mean and what recovery means in itself.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
During the break, I know we dug into that a little bit, so let's
talk about
give
that.
our listeners the deets,
the tea.
The tea.
I mean, I have something to say in relation to what you said earlier, Sweets, which was the fact that we don't know what normalcy looks like. So the fact that we sort of move through this particular phase, we'll just use the term recovery to describe it, but sort of moving through the obsession and the restlessness or whatever way we want to describe it in terms of the compulsion to use. And I said this to somebody recently where it was like, yeah, but I'm dealing with like real deal shit now. I'm dealing with like adult shit, like shit I should have been dealing with when I was 27 when I got clean. Now I'm faced with building a business, what that's going to look like, trying to get through school, time management, self-care, keeping boundaries up to the toxic people in the world that somehow gravitate towards me. So it's all these things that like everyone else that I know that is dealing with it never had a drug addiction problem or struggled with alcoholism. So I think for me, that's sort of what was a little bit of the tipping point too of when I shifted from recovery or recovering to recovered was like, I'm dealing with stuff that everyone out there who has nothing to do with addiction is also working on too. So then what does that mean?
Right.
Well, maybe there's points in our life, and this is another way of looking at maybe there's points in our life where we are recovered, and maybe there's points in our life where we need a little bit more recovery.
So what is that? What's recovery?
Good question.
Well, to me, my explanation, you're recovered from X, Y, Z, but now I have to recover, like you were saying before, Meg. I switched from recovery to recovered, and now I have to kind of take my life in a different direction.
Yeah.
So maybe that one thing that I'm always recovering from something, and maybe I'm recovered from that particular behavior or that particular thing I've been stuck on, and now it's time to get recovery in another part of my life. Maybe.
But is it still recovery at that point, or is it just growth? Like, do we just call it recovery because we don't know what else to call it?
I guess it would be growth. But because we're in like you said.
But what I'm saying is, if somebody's never been through addiction before, aren't they just doing the same thing? Like, is it actual recovery?
For us, it is. For the normies outside that window.
Is it though?
I think
isn't it just now we've gotten to a place where? Because I always look at it like, I create like a level, right? The level is 0. And for most of my life, I lived at below 0, like maybe negative -1 million. And everything I did, every time I went to treatment, I stepped up a little bit, grew a little bit, but I still lived beneath 0, right? And for me, I look at my recovery process was getting back to 0. And then once I hit 0, I lived in the normal realm. I lived in reality with everybody else. And now I was still starting at 0, but it wasn't recovery. Now I was just doing normal life. I was set back a little bit, so I needed an advanced class. But I don't look at that as recovery. I just look at that as once I crossed that threshold of the 0 degree mark and I got back up into normal territory. Yeah. Now I was just living life at a disadvantage. But I don't see that as connected to my recovery.
I have to.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, 100%.
It does make sense, but the normies out there, they don't. If they take a step back or if they go below 0, they don't go back out and use again. They don't go.
Well, it doesn't mean It doesn't mean I'm not vigilant, and it doesn't mean I don't protect my recovery. But I'm just saying, once I hit that 0 mark, now I'm just doing like normal life people stuff, and that doesn't. I don't need to go to AA to do that. I don't need my steps to do that. My steps are the foundation that I stand on. That getting to that 0 mark. The rest of it is like I actually have to lean on other normal people to figure out how to deal with it. Like, relationship advice. I don't go back to AA and be like, what should I tell my girlfriend? Do you know what I mean? I reach forward and I ask other people that have been living in this normal world longer than I have, and I'm like, hey, what do you guys do? Like, what's a normal thing?
That's recovery. That's recovery. You're moving. You're still growing. You're learning.
Disagree. I think that's just personal growth, and I think it's what normal people do too. I think we just call it recovery because that's the only word we have for it. But I think it's just normal life and normal growth.
Recovery growth.
I just don't like the word recovery at that level.
But we're in a different world, though. See, I have to disagree with you because I think we're in a different world. We don't know what normal is. We really don't.
I think that's why we throw that label on it.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a quick story about my daughter. So we're driving in a car. She was a little bit younger. She's like, Mom, how come so-and-so isn't normal like us? I was like, holy shit. Like, we ain't fucking normal.
No. So, I love that word.
You know? So I said, honey, listen, we don't, our normal isn't that person's normal. My normal isn't yours or Sweet's is normal. There's not a baseline normal. I mean, normal being, we're saying we're good human beings, but we do things differently than the neighbors or the than her friends or whatever. So there isn't a normal. There isn't like, okay, look, I can't look up normal in the computer and it's going to give me, okay, this is where everybody's baseline normal is. So your normal might be different than mine.
Yeah, my zero line is different than yours.
Exactly. Yeah, your zero line, and that's the normal line. So when we get to that zero line in recovery. Are we recovered? No, I would say no, because don't you want to go to 100 and then 200 and 400 and 1,000 and
But
10,000?
is that recovery or is that just normal life growth?
Because recovery then suggests, if we look at the actual term, like I said earlier, to restore what was, we're healing from an injury. What if we've healed from the injury and now that process is, we want to reach 100 and then 400, but to Sweet's point, do we call that recovery? And I think from my perspective, and people can look this up, the growth versus the fixed mindset, Carol Dweck talks about all of this. Is there an implication for us somehow keeping the ceiling above us in a way by using the term recovery that somehow prevents the expansive thought that we sometimes need to thrive? And that would be my question.
I hear that.
And I also think from a criminal justice perspective, let me just say, when you go into the court and you're suing somebody, they're financially trying to make you whole. Does recovery then make us whole? And if it does, then is there a next stage to that?
Absolutely, we become a whole person, and then we start to grow.
Yeah.
You can't grow until you hit that, like, you put that foundation up. You know what I mean? Like, I used to build foundations in my younger years, and we'd show up at a job site, and there was just a hole in the ground. Do you know what I mean? Or maybe there's no hole in the ground. Like, this is where the hole's going to be. And we go through all that stuff, and then we go in, we dig the hole, we put the footing down, we build the foundation, and then we leave. Our part is done. The foundation has been built. We don't keep coming back to house because there's nothing left for us to do. Now there's a house being built.
Maintain that foundation.
I don't.
Now.
I was a foundation worker. We're no longer working on the foundation.
Okay.
Now there's a house being built. Now it's all about the house and decorating the house and putting shutters on and painting it and then redecorating and stuff like that. But the foundation is there.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what getting me to that zero line was. I built the foundation. Now it's about building a house. And that's a totally different process, I think. You know?
And I'll say, too, John Kelly speaks to this about the different trajectories of people's recovery and what they need at different points. Now, maybe that foundation was built and solid enough to build that house. But that doesn't mean in 5 years from now, when that house is getting dilapidated, that you don't go back to the foundation and do a little restoration.
Absolutely.
So maybe you come back and do some tweaks, but do we call that recovery?
But that's not recovery. That's maintenance. Look at the 5 stages of change. You don't go backward. You get, once you do, it's pre-contemplation, contemplation, planning, and then action. And then maintenance. Maintenance, of course, we're not forgetting about maintenance, but maintenance is you're not still planning. You're not, it's not still, I have to go back and do the actions. Maintenance is just, hey, is everything still okay?
Yep.
I don't necessarily see that as recovering still. I've recovered from that thing. Now I'm maintaining it.
Okay, so maintaining versus, so let's say somebody gets divorced or experiences a death. Where does that fall? How do you deal with that? Is that you recovery kicking in, or do you get recovered from that? Is that maintenance?
Well, if in my recovery process I develop the skill sets to deal with the challenges that come at me, then those are just now my life skills. I'm not like falling back into recovery. I mean, I think I have recovered from that thing, and now I am capable of dealing with what life has to throw at me without using drugs or alcohol, no matter what. Right? So that's the foundation that was built. Now it's just I have to feel all the feelings that everybody else feels without drinking and doing drugs, something I don't have a lot of practice in. Now it's just practice. It's maintenance. So I'm maintaining it, but I don't think I'm still actively in recovery trying to deal with these things. I think I'm just trying to deal with the world the same way everybody else is.
Real quick, I just want to let everybody know this is just an opinion of all of us.
All opinions,
also. This is not a
I'm actually just talking through my opinions.
Exactly.
I'm not even firmly set on this one.
No, but I just, because people are listening, and this is a good subject for us a little bit deeper in recovery. If you recovered or whatever you guys are calling it, but somebody early recovery, they shouldn't even be kind of even entertaining what we're talking about.
Yeah, if you still have a broken leg and a cast on, don't worry about running.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, we're talking about after the cast comes off.
Exactly. But I see your point, but how do I grow? See, I always wonder, again, it comes back to how do I grow? I know we're going round and round.
Well, it's the fishbowl theory. I mean, a goldfish can only grow as big as the bowl it's in, right? Mm-hmm. A shark can only grow as big as the tank it's in. I mean, yeah, AA and Smart Recovery and Refuge Recovery, like those are all good bowls to start off in because they're safe. Like I talked on a previous episode about the lobster, right? Mm-hmm. You know, the lobster goes under the rock, casts off its shell, gets vulnerable, creates a new shell, and then comes out. You know, there's something to be said for the safety of that fishbowl in the beginning, but that fishbowl is only so big. You know, you can only get so much personal growth and life growth in the fishbowl, and eventually you need to come out from under that rock, and you need to experience life so that you can grow more. And I'm saying at that point, you're just facing life's natural challenges. Mm-hmm. And even though we don't have a reference point, we're just dealing with it like everybody else does. We're trying to find a way through it. That, to me, again, I hate to use the word normal, but to me, that's a sense of normalcy, that I've recovered from that way of life. And now I'm just out here in the big ocean, swimming around with everybody else, trying to deal with all the friggin' trash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's... Again, that's my perspective. That's what keeps me sober. That's what keeps me safe. Yeah. And that's how I define my recovery. It has nothing to do with anyone else.
No,
but that's just
absolutely.
That's what's palatable to me. That's what gets me up every day. That's what helps me go to sleep at night.
Yeah. And absolutely, there's people that I know. My sponsor, 30, probably I think he's 37, 38 years recovery. He goes to a meeting almost every day. Mm-hmm. I couldn't do that. I mean, I couldn't work your guys' recovery. I do my own. And I just wouldn't have time to go to meetings there, but that's what he needs. Mm-hmm. So I guess everybody's fishbowl would be life or whatever it is, looks a little different than whatever. But I guess our main goal is get out of that fishbowl and swim in the ocean with all the other normal people. So we're just looking normal. We're not that. You know?
Otherwise you're just hiding out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Avoidance. That's not recovery. That's just avoidance.
Yeah. It's just not living life on life's terms.
Right.
You know, and that's just not good.
I think the other thing too is like to this point of what does recovery actually mean. I think, it's safe for me to use the word recovered, but that's because of my internal state of how I conceptualize substances and my relationship with them and my reaction to them. I think that if I still had a very real, visceral reaction to the urge or the craving to use, whether that's 5 years in, 10 years in, 15 years in, I'd probably say, yeah, I'm still doing the active recovery program that got me to this point, and I'm still recovering. It's just that I don't feel the pull to be that, like I just emotionally and spiritually and psychically, I think there's enough of a distance there for me personally between the idea of ever using again and where I am now that I don't feel close enough to it to consider myself still recovering. But like I said, this is everyone's different experience. I mean, there are people that I know that are 10, 15 years sober that are like, if I don't hit a meeting today, I'm using. Or I feel like I'm that close.
Still in recovery.
Exactly.
What about those folks that are 20 years sober and they go back out again? Where do they land?
No maintenance.
No, there you go. You're right. Okay, there you go. No,
I mean,
maintenance.
recovered without maintenance is not really recovered.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, if recovered with ignorance is a relapse waiting to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So, again, that's why I said earlier, I can only say the word recovered because in my recovery process, I developed a healthy knowledge and fear of my illness, and so as a recovered individual, I am fully aware of that. I'm also, I would have to say the caveat to my opinion on this is that I'm immersed in the industry.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I eat, sleep, and breathe addiction on a daily basis. I'm either doing interventions, training for interventions, working with families, speaking with families, writing books, on podcasts about addiction. Like if I'm not talking about addiction, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
and so, the caveat here is that it's always right on the front of my mind. Mm-hmm. When I say, like, if you're saying recovered and then just pretend nothing happened, bad business right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's not what we're talking, or at least that's not what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
And I think you put what was the two definitions you had there? Recovery and recovered.
Yeah. So this is from Oliver Pratt. Is that how you say it? Pyatt. Recovery is a process. Recovered is more like an outcome.
Right. So Meg, what you were just saying is that if you have not reached the outcome yet, right? The outcome being the no longer having the desire to drink or do drugs. If you haven't reached the outcome, then of course you are still recovering.
Yeah.
You know, but if the goal is to get to that point, then why wouldn't you start off by saying, I would like to be recovered? Why not sell yourself that point from the beginning that A, it's possible, and B, that's your objective. Even if you can't reach it, that should be your objective.
That's your goal,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
And if that's your objective, even as scary as that big goal might be, that should always be your goal. If your goal is to live a life actively in recovery, then so be it. If that's your version of recovery and happiness. But mine wasn't. I wanted something different. So
mine's recovered. So we could say recovered in maintenance.
Yes, recovered plus maintenance. I mean, again, just my take.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, there's all different versions, and again, this is just our opinions on it. You work your program the way you work it. If you're 20 years sober and you need a meeting, fuck, man, go to one. You know,
I'd love to hear our listeners' opinions.
I would too.
You know,
Helping
like
friends,
comments, questions, like you know, whether it's on Facebook, leave a question or a comment. You watch it on YouTube, leave a question or a comment. Like, we want to hear from you too.
Yeah. See we're because this is a very interesting topic.
It is, yeah.
And it can go on, and we could sit here another 20 hours and talk it, and still not come out with an outcome.
I can't do that. I just don't have it. Sorry, guys. Production team is leaving, and you're going to be on your own for that one.
Well, I've been talking all day, so I'm
Jersey
pretty
will
much
be in here with the lights off, just talking still.
As long as like, all right, recovered, I'm recovered. I don't know what I'm saying. I gotta get to a yoga class.
I wouldn't call that very good recovery if you did that.
I wouldn't call that it. No. Listen, all of us in this room, including the Podfather when he's here, we all work in the field. And we are special, number one, to work in this field. It takes a special person. That's number one. And number two, we're talking about recovery day in, day out. Our lives are recovery. But think of a normal person that might be a banker or a pilot or whatever, where they don't have the opportunity to talk like this.
That is different.
You know, that's completely different.
Yeah.
We know this world inside and out. We know everything about the recovery world inside and out, including our own recovery. People out there who just go to a meeting, talk to a sponsor, and then go to a job. They don't do this all day.
Right.
So maybe we're looking at it from the not the wrong side, but from a side where we're immersed completely our lives into it.
Well, that's why I threw that little caveat in there. That like all of my opinions are based on the fact that I'm consumed with this all day. So I don't forget. Yeah. And if you're out there in recovery and you do forget, then you're at risk.
Yeah.
Well, let's hear from the everyday normal people, the pilots and the construction workers. Let us know how you do it. You know, get us on Facebook or get us. The links are right below everything. You know,
Let's take a caller.
Yeah.
Oh, we can't do that right now.
Hold on, I'll call in real quick. Hi, Ed here.
Hey, yeah, I agree with Jersey Ed, and I think Meg, you're great. By the way, you're so great.
Thank you, Sue from Jersey.
I don't like that sweets guy.
Oh, God. But it's just opinion. So leave those comments and everything there. So, Meg, you have anything to wrap up? You want to tell us about your podcast?
Sure.
What's going on?
Check out the Addictionary podcast. We have some things in the works. Potentially a book deal coming.
Nice.
We'll see.
Saw a little something about that.
I don't want to jinx myself, but fingers crossed on that one. We're waiting a while for that. So who knows? Stay tuned.
Good.
Slay tuned, as I like to say.
All right. Sweets, anything?
I mean, I don't have anything coming up. I have more podcasting to do, but no, I think that I'm a big fan of this podcast, probably because I'm on it. But I think that it's a valuable resource, and if you're listening, I'd really love you to take the opportunity to share it with just one friend. You know, I think you said that. Just share it with just one friend, and you may not need it, but remember there's other people out there. So if you're scrolling by and you see the link, or if you're watching on YouTube and you're thinking about not finishing it, well, congratulations, you made it to the end. But share it, like it, comment, whatever you can do. And I think that's what we're trying to do. We're all trying to raise awareness. We're all trying to get the message out. And not everybody can get to a meeting. And some of these podcasts are just like a little meeting.
Yep. Meeting outside the meeting.
That's right. Well, here we go. Stay sober, everybody.
Fantastic. That concludes this episode of Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast. Thanks to Genesis House for supporting those on the path to recovery and for keeping this valuable resource free for our Friends in Recovery community. Follow us on Facebook for past shows and updates. If you're interested in becoming a guest on the show, email us at help@friendsinrecoverypodcast.com. If you can't get enough of Mike the Podfather and Jersey Ed, you can catch them on Answering the Call, the First Responder podcast, available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube.